So my apologies in not having my full voice. Someone said earlier, oh, I thought you would cancel. And I'm like, I'm a former CIA operative, and I've done Operation 0% visibility in sandstorms in Baghdad. Like, I'm here for it. So thank you for being here with me as well. So the future of work, is it here yet? And you're gonna see from my talk, it's really a continuation from the conversation that Missy and Nicholas had us before. You know, everybody talks about the future of work, but what is it? And is it actually here, or when is it coming? And here I'm borrowing on this quote you may have heard from science fiction author about the future is here and it's not evenly distributed. So yes, the future is here, but maybe not here for you. And the other, yet. And the metaphor I'm going to draw on is the canary in the coal mine. So you may have heard that coal miners would bring a canary down into the mines to let them know if there are poisonous gases, because the canary would die first and it would let them know, hey, we need to get out of the mine. So in this case, when I'm thinking about the future is actually happening to the canary. It's happening to the people that are the most precarious, the most marginalized, the most vulnerable. So if you look at the periphery of your organization, the people who are in call centers, they're the people that are experiencing algorithmic management first. OpenAI is built on the backs of labor in the global south. This is where AI and algorithmic management is being trained. So if you want to look at the future, we actually have to look outside to then come in. And two empirical examples I want to give to you about this. You look at predictive policing, or you look about who is going to get a subprime loan. That's often went to our most marginalized members of society who didn't have the voice to sort of stand up. Now we're talking about AIs and LLMs sort of going for entry-level jobs. You think about in the UK, you might have seen in the press, where they're trying to have predictive algorithms tell whether or not children should go to college. Obviously, parents are getting a little bit upset about that. So you can see right now, here are these examples about how these algorithmic tools are sort of fine-tuned on the most vulnerable parts of our population and then sort of integrated into the mainstream. And that's what I want to talk to you a bit about my research today, where I focus on some of the most marginalized groups in our society, gig workers, your Uber driver. I was one of them. Maybe I've given you a ride sometime. Probably have delivered your packages, though. A lot of you guys order from Amazon Prime. So as I mentioned before, lots of jobs, periphery in some ways to the organization, but core to our economy, from warehousing, retail work, call centers. Even the folks at KFC and Taco Bell are being monitored by these algorithmic software that's tracking surveillance, sentiment analysis. And really what we're seeing is the new wave of how do we move from electronic surveillance to managing people's activities. So when you think about the future of work, I tend to think of it in these 4 quadrants, and I'm really going to drill down on this quadrant at the bottom, how the work is managed around algorithmic management. So what is algorithmic management? Well, I'm going to define it for you. Algorithmic management is when software algorithms assume the managerial functions of responsibility, such as hiring, firing, evaluating, and disciplining. So again, as I mentioned before, is that movement from just tracking or pure surveillance, such as with the camera, to sort of saying, oh, your productivity level's not that high. You didn't upsell me on that scarf at Ann Taylor. Maybe I'm not going to give you that schedule you want next time. So it might be more and more likely that the tracking you're seeing in your job is actually influencing some of your evaluations and your disciplining. So pillars of algorithmic management. I've already talked about how this tracking and surveillance is sort of being moved up into the managerial functions. And you often see this in the form of rating systems. So obvious in the case of your Instacart or delivery driver, 4 or 5 stars. But you think about the quantification of work and the rank and stack rankings. As much as we like to get qualitative ratings as part of our work, it makes us feel good. Most people's qualitative reports are really high, and you want your bonuses to be based on something concrete. And that's where those numbers come in. And so you can really see algorithmic management there sort of fitting into that part of our ranking systems, which are very, very much tied to performance. And I'm going to here now sort of double click and go deep on the nudges. So it's obvious we've heard of nudges, when you think about, there's a little chime that happens on your phone if you're an Instacart shopper that lets you know when you're able to get a new order. But nudges and sort of that psychological priming is really key to what helps algorithmic management work. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into that. So as was mentioned really graciously in my introduction, I'm going to talk about the gig economy. And I love the gig economy because I always say it punches above its weight class. And by that I mean it's only about 1% of the US population that works in these jobs. but everybody here has heard of gig work. As 97% of Americans know what Uber and Lyft is. I mean, it's really only Coca-Cola and Kleenex that have such high, brand recognition. And if we've seen in all these legal cases that are happening, AB 5, Prop 22 in California, what's about to, the Attorney General's office in Massachusetts is doing a case, Illinois, New York State, Philadelphia, all these cities are making laws about how do you regulate this type of work. Are they taxis or are they technology companies? And I have to say, in terms of safety and regulations, you actually kind of want them better to be regulated as taxi companies, so you have a sense of liability and background checks. This is not purely a tech company, though they're tech-enabled. But the point here I'm trying to get at is that the gig economy has large implications around worker classification. You can get around paying the minimum wage in this type of jobs. How do you socialize workers into a job where you actually never met a manager? I never met anybody who worked for any of these companies while I drove until one of them bombed my job talk, but that's a whole nother story. So here I'm getting at that gig economy, only 1% of the workforce, but we're looking at some of the most marginalized people in our society in terms of work and employment, and they have lessons to teach us about how algorithmic management is going to keep on coming to play in the future. So the question I have is, you've probably seen everything in the news about algorithmic management. It's so exploitive. This is Taylorism or digital exploitation at the extreme. And I want to ask the question, well, then why do people turn on this app every day? It's not just schedule flexibility. It's not just economic dependence. I wanted to know a question, to get an answer that was richer than that. And so my core question is how do algorithmic managements elicit enthusiastic cooperation into their work? How do you get people excited every day when they're going to be managed by an algorithm? So I'm about to tell you the secret. So I collected my data, as I mentioned before, been following these huge group of drivers for about 7 years in the United States. I'm also in 7 countries across the world. I was a driver part-time for several years, data from lots of different sources. And I really like to get my hands dirty. As you can tell, I deliver packages, I drive people around. I once lived in a van as part of a research project. And when I told my boss, Dean James, this, she was like, do I pay you enough money? Why are you living in a van? And I'm like, no, it's for research, I promise. There'll be a paper. So that's the currency for academia, right? There'll be a paper. But this gives you a sense of what the data I'm drawing in. So this is what the ride cycle looks like if you are an Uber driver. Or a ride-hailing driver. I'm sure many of you have experienced this as a customer, but here we're sort of flipping the script. So in many ways, you would think it's sort of straightforward. You choose your platform, you choose when and where you're going to start driving, and then you start the cycle of work. So, where am I going to wait? Am I going to accept or deny the request? Where am I going to pick up the rider, start the ride? Maybe I talk to the rider, but usually y'all got your headphones in your ear and you don't want to talk to us. Navigate traffic, drop off and rate, and we start the ride all over again. But what I want to pull your attention to are those gray arrows. Because every single one of those gray arrows, you're interacting with another part of the algorithmic management system. You get to say, swipe left or swipe right. Am I going to rate 4 stars or 5 stars? Am I going to follow this navigation app or that? So these very small, minute choices, they're narrow, but they're real. And they can give people a sense of autonomy in their work and to feel like they have a sense of agency. Again, choices small and narrow, but actually real. So I'm going to give you a sense right now of what this algorithm looks like from the driver's side. This is the work matching algorithm, so it lets you know when a ride comes in. And these are my field notes from my very first day in the field. First day, I'm sitting on a shady street 2 blocks from my house, nervously checking my phone every 20 seconds so I don't miss a ping. My phone is on my dashboard when it suddenly starts buzzing. Yay, a ride. I see a flashing circle with a timer counting down. My hands are sweaty, the phone is vibrating, and while trying to swipe, I drop the phone under the seat. Darn. I didn't actually say darn. After a few seconds, the phone goes quiet. I've lost my first ride. The day becomes even more disastrous. I'm in Washington, D.C., and it's very hot. And I didn't know I was supposed to buy something that attached the phone to the AC vent. So my phone overheated. I didn't know how to get the person to their place. I wasn't paid for the ride. I should have watched some YouTube videos, but I didn't. And So but this is trying to give you a sense of the tension that's happening. It's just me and my car, but you can see what the interactions I'm having with the algorithm. And you see that bar at the bottom, it's counting down, letting me know that I only have a certain amount of time while it's shaking to sort of make this choice. This is the surge algorithm. You've probably heard about it. So this is a map of the lakefront in Chicago. The darker the color, the higher the surge, the higher the money you make. And when you open up the app, before you even say go online, this is the very first thing you see. And so Sarah says you turn on your app, you see that orange bright color around downtown. That means there's a surge, there's high demand, you rush into that area. If that wasn't enough, then you get all these handy text messages that are nudging you. So I was in Philadelphia part of my time when I was driving, and so I got demand is higher in Center City, Adele is playing, take advantage of higher than normal fares. So you can get these senses here of how the nudges are working, how the algorithmic management system is trying to encourage you to align your behavior in a way that's in alignment with the management system. So what do people actually do with these nudges? So I'm going to talk about two games that workers play. So this game I call the relational game. And here you think the algorithm is helping you. It is your friend. Chapman says, I call it lucky or blessed, but it seems when I start late, I'll just get trips that are worth more money. I can't say that I aim for that. It just seems I get lucky all the time. I catch a surge, a big surge halfway across town. And then I catch another surge back across town. And then I'll be right back to the money where I would have been working that morning. I say it's a groove because I'm getting the same luck. I know what it takes to get my $200 a day. You can see Chapman actually has no idea what it takes to get $200 a day. He just believes the algorithm is directing him in a way that's allowing him to sort of get the best amount of money at the best time. And this positive interpretation of the algorithm actually shapes the way he interacts with customers. So in the relational game, these are pictures of people's cars. So this is the party car. It was very famous in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but a few other cities have party cars. They've got strobe lights, they've got music, they've got tinsel. Friday night, you go into the frat, you're all talking about, did you get the party car, the Uber car? Many of you have probably seen these cars. They've got lots of snacks for you. They have chargers, water. Some of them have summer sausages and blankets. They really want you to have a positive experience. And this last car is a woman who decorated her car with unicorn decals because she said when women got into her car, they'd be like, wow, it reminds me of my childhood bedroom. You know, one person, actually tried to give me a tarot card reading. He had crystals all over his car. But you can see with these people, they are obsessed around the customer focus. They're also obsessed with their rating system. They can tell you their rating to like the 100th percentile, the 100th decimal point, because they're playing the relational game. The algorithmic management system has brought them in to invest into sort of how do I get the best performance for the customer, which is then showed up in my ratings and my compliments. And I also just have this rosy interpretation about the rest of the algorithmic management system. Remember Chapman saying that he was blessed and lucky, though he really didn't understand how the system worked. Now, the second game is the efficiency game. And here, you do not think the algorithm is out here to help you. So this is Slim in New York, and he says, I swear there's a conspiracy because in the afternoons, I logged in every single day at 4 o'clock. I would get a long ride that would take me out of the city in the opposite direction toward the airport. And then right after I got out of the city would light up like a Christmas tree. I swore it was a conspiracy against me because I did very little, if any, primetime rides because I'm always sent in the opposite direction. Now, was there really a conspiracy against Slim? I don't really think so. But you have a lot of people taking very detailed notes about the algorithm, what they think the algorithm is going to do, all their sort of ways to try to sort of outmaneuver the algorithm because they see it sort of as a war. This is like a game, but a game where the odds are stacked against them. And this actually influences the way they interact with customers. So thinking sort of about our last conversation about hospitality, these people are not hospitable at all. So this is a car that has a backpack. So if you've been in a car with a backpack, that means they don't want to talk to you. They are not playing the relational game. They see you, the person, as an object or a fare to go in and out as quickly as possible. One of my people said, I'm not here to powwow with people. I'm here to make money. This is a car here in Philadelphia. She actually dropped me off here at Huntsman one day. And the sign, in case you can't read it, says, "Do not touch the sign. Do not move the towel. Do not slam the door. No eating, no drinking. Take your trash." And I asked her, could I touch the sign so I could take a picture? She's like, "You can take a picture, but don't touch the sign." So what you might be thinking, relational game good, efficiency game bad. It's not that simple. I have followed these people for 7 years. They keep on playing the game, whichever game it is. Now, are people with the relational game more happy, more satisfied with their job? I would say for the most part, yes, because the user interface design is aligned with the game they're trying to play, so they can feel like they can win. The efficiency people, depends on whether or not they're happy. It depends if they feel like they're beating the algorithm. But the idea here is if you have a game, you have a way to be invested in the system. You have a way to win, and that's what's really important here. People I find who don't play a game at all, they stop driving within about 6 to 7 months. So here the idea is, how do you seed games in your workplace? So there's a difference between gamification, where I'm trying to turn this into a video game, versus sort of designing your system so there are the proper tools in place so people can make sense of their work. So there are multiple ways to motivate someone. If you've been in Management 612 with me, I know a few of you have, motivation is in the eye of the beholder. Different things motivate different people. So you've got to have the tools in place. People have got to be able to read your algorithmic metric system for whatever is the metric they care about. So in the relational game, they care about the ratings and the compliments and the badges, all those non-monetary incentives. The people who are playing the efficiency game, it was all about cash. And so a lot of their complaints were about the opacity of the algorithmic management system, Uber not telling them how they broke down the fare, Uber not being clear where there's high demand. And this sort of plays out in other research. The more complex the work is, the more metrics you have to give people about their work. And the metrics they think are the most important may not be the metrics that you, the manager, are most important. But ultimately, you have to give them enough information because both games are tied to commitment. And the more information they can have to make the game, the more satisfied they're in and the more they continue to invest into the work. And then lastly, to think about a game, any game has a bit of uncertainty. It's the same with Monopoly. Like, are you going to land on Mediterranean? Boo. Or are you going to land on New York Avenue? Great. So you have to have uncertainty because that brings people into the game. But if you have too much of it, then people feel like the odds are stacked against them, and then they're quitting the app altogether. So it's about finding that Goldilocks right in the middle. So this is talking, sort of calling back to Missy's talk where she talked about human in the loop. Here I want to talk about human as a stopgap. And this is from some of my emerging work on warehouse, because warehouses are really the sort of a new place where we're seeing algorithmic management being perfected. And there are all sorts of issues around warehouse work. But when you talk to workers who feel like they're the most satisfied or getting out of it, it's a combination of, yes, I have algorithmic management that is tracking me. I know sort of what it is of how I'm doing in terms of performance, but I'm actually not really getting penalized for that. I can use that for my own information, and there's managerial leniency built in. So I'm not just going to get automatically fired, which of course has happened in some warehouses because the algorithm said so. So it's about how do you have in these tracking potentials, as well as having a manager there to sort of actually hit that red button sort of at that car to stop disaster from happening. And there's also ways that you can build what we call strategic intimacies with managers. So I know this might hurt Juliet's ears, but we talk about the 4-day work week. What if a 4-day work week was a gift to some of your employees as a way of doing a good job? You can see right here by sort of building up that sort of trust and this feeling of reciprocity, even when you have really tight algorithmic management, the research says it's one of the ways to sort of keep people really engaged in the work. And then lastly, do not think an algorithmic management system is going to fix all of your problems if you can just make it tight enough or efficient enough. I mean, there's some ways where Amazon really thinks that with their delivery cars, which I think is going to backfire, because it's impossible to program away all human deviance. I mean, humans are humans. We're going to find ways to get around things. I'm going to date myself, but some of you might remember MySpace. It was before Facebook. And I thought I was really cool because I could like hack into the MySpace page. I used to be a hacker. I could hack into the MySpace page and I could like make music and I could like change my background and I felt cool. I was customizing my page. But MySpace knew what I was doing. I now realize this in reading, books about MySpace. They knew people were hacking in and customizing their product, and they thought it was great because it showed customer engagement. And I think in many ways, Uber knows these tricks that drivers are doing to get around their systems, but they choose not to penalize it. Because if you penalize too harshly, you're sort of going to shut people out from wanting to play any sort of game altogether. And then just lastly, I want to touch on the fact there's a lot of invisible work that's happening, whether it's the human labor that's sort of building our OpenAI systems, or the fact when I was an Uber driver, I'd have to take a picture to photo verify myself. That picture went to someone in India who verified that picture was the same that I looked like I took when I first started driving 6 months ago and said, yes, Lindsey can go online. So there's this whole component of invisible labor that we need to keep on thinking about as we're building these systems and not just to erase work and erase the skills these people have. So I want to say thank you. You've been a 5-star audience. And if I can leave you with one word or one question, the next time you get in your Uber, ask him what game is he playing and if he's winning the game. Thank you.